All right, and we're back with the program. Thanks again for joining us. Well, we're continuing our series of individuals out there that want to share their Marvel memories and how they tie into Avengers Endgame. And one person I had to ask that is we're just so appreciative of being on the show. She is the host or one of the main keys behind the Nutty Bites podcast, and also a show that I know is going to be of great interest to a lot of people out there this weekend, and that is Beyond the Wall, because it focuses obviously on the great stuff going on with the Game of Thrones. It is my good friend. It is Nutty Nuchtchas, and I'll tell you what, Nutty, it's just great to have you back on the program.
Thanks so much for having me back. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, as always, you were so insightful in your thoughts on Captain Marvel. I had to bring you back in because obviously you've got that great Marvel knowledge. And, as I said before we went on the program right now, that hype train for Avengers Endgame, it's like a runaway locomotive. It's already just like going
Oh
down
yeah,
the
it's
hill.
going.
Yes.
And
It's, it,
I think Captain Marvel has actually helped it. I think that it's really funny. So I've been to see it a couple of times now. That's how much I enjoyed it. Um, and I took my sister to see it while she was up here, and she only knows Marvel through the cinematic universe. She's never read any comics. She's definitely a muggle when it comes to sci-fi and so forth.
with
But
the Harry Potter reference there.
oh, totally. But she, she started watching a lot more movies when she was taking her daughter to an evening event on Fridays, and it was just faster for her to go watch a movie while her daughter was doing the thing than to drive home only to have to immediately drive back. So she really started doing that right around the beginning of the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe thing starting. Like, she right around Iron Man is when that started happening. So she would start talking to me and she's like, okay, so I watched this and these are my questions. And she would come to me with questions. So we went and we saw Captain Marvel. I said, I know you're really going to enjoy this. And she says, well, I haven't been watching as many of the movies as I have in the past. Um, what do I need to know before going in? I said, you know who Nick Fury is? She goes, yeah, the guy with the eye patch. I'm like, okay. You know who Agent Coulson is? She goes, of course I know Agent Coulson. He was the husband on the New Adventures of Old Christine. I was like, yes, him. And she said, yeah, I know those. I'm like, that's all you need to know. And we went in and we watched it, and it was great because there was nobody else in the theater. And as things were happening and things were getting revealed, her reactions were so wild to me because she's not a full comic book nerd. But like, Fury gets in a fight and he's got the the ice pack over his eye, and she's like, oh no, his eye's okay. And throughout the entire movie, she keeps flinching about the eye. And then when we see the Tesseract, she goes, that's the Tesseract. So I was really excited to see that. But I think that Captain Marvel really has helped amp people up for Endgame. And she said to me at the end of this, she says, now I really want to see what happens next, because she says, she says, the last Avengers movie, that's the one where everybody turned into dust, right? I said, yes, that's the one. She goes, now they got Captain Marvel. So that's going to be really interesting. So I think that, I can't believe I'm saying this, but yeah, I think they're they're really doing everything right to kind of push everyone towards Endgame.
That they are indeed. I'll tell you what, it's so great to see how well Captain Marvel is performing. And you and I talked just before the movie came out, and there was still speculation on how well it was going to do. The fact that there was so many naysayers, so much negativity as far as trying to drive it down. And it has not only broken through that negativity, but it has broken through in spades. It will probably finish up its run worldwide at about $1.1 billion. And that has to make everybody at Disney and Marvel extremely happy. Her as a character going forward is going to be part of that next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We'll see how much she's involved in this part of Endgame, because I still have a feeling personally that they're going to focus on that older core of the Avengers as far as that's concerned. I know, according to the trailers, and I know a lot of people have seen the trailers out there already, that she, and from also the end credits and whatnot, she's back in the Avengers headquarters, and she says, "Let's go after Thanos. Let's go after Thanos." Her enthusiasm is running high, and her ambition and will and drive is there. But how much she's allowed to go ahead and be a part of the entire experience, we'll have to wait and see. It just, from all the trailers and all those, I guess those entities out there that I've seen that have speculated on what's going on, the speculation is that she comes in back to Avengers Endgame. That scene we saw in the end credits in Captain Marvel is early on in the film, and that they go ahead and try to attack Thanos early on. Whether or not it's a win or it's a loss, it looks like it's a loss early on, but then they come back and somehow at some point in time, maybe once, maybe twice, maybe through time travel, maybe through the quantum realm, somehow or some way, hopefully they'll get the job done, and hopefully Captain Marvel will be a big part of that.
Yeah, I think I've said before on your show that I try to only watch one trailer because I don't want to oversaturate myself. But one thing I did notice about the trailer is, and this is all based on Black Widow's hair. Um, there's going to be a lot of time. This is not going to be something that happens in a weekend or a week. There is going to be a lot of time that is traversed in this movie, because she starts out with short hair. She's got short hair in part of the movie and long hair in another part of the movie. And the
It
hair
goes from
colors,
blonde back
yeah,
to red.
exactly. And the hair color is changing. So we're going to see a lot of time. My prediction for Endgame is that Endgame is going to be retiring those original characters. Yes, there will be focus on them, but it's also going to be kind of a bit of a retirement for them, and introducing us to what the next phase is going to be, because we know that Marvel has planned all the way out until, like, last I heard was 2025, but it might be 2035. Who knows? That they have a plan for many more movies. And we know that Chris,
Black Widow's getting her own movie, but the speculation is that it's taking place in the past, so that could mean that there could be something going on for her character, because I know there's a
yeah,
lot of speculation. Captain America and
yeah,
Iron Man, they're the heavy favorites to kick the bucket in this movie, but something could happen to her character as well if Black Widow is set in the past.
yeah, absolutely. And like, I don't know that they're going to die per se. I would not be surprised if there's like a multiple Earth situation. But we do know that
Dimensions type deal, different
yeah,
dimension.
we do know that Chris Evans, is that his name? The guy that plays Captain America. There's too many Chris's in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Anyway, we do know that he's planning on moving on from the character. Robert Downey Jr. has been saying that for a while, and then he keeps coming back. So, it'll be really interesting to see. One of the things that I am expecting is I am expecting Proton to show up as well. We saw young Monica Rambeau, as we know from the comics, was Proton and was actually once Captain Marvel. And if she was a little girl in the 90s, then she'll be in her 30s for Endgame. So there's a really good chance of seeing her. So I'm really interested to see what happens there. I am all for more female superheroes in the next phase of the Marvel movies, because why did it take so long? Why didn't we get a Black Widow movie sooner? Why didn't we get something sooner? As much as I love Captain Marvel, it's took way too long.
And that's something I've been arguing for years, since
Yeah.
my daughters became fascinated almost in diapers at the original scene in Avengers where she gets on top of the Shintari, and as far as that little battle thing that he was going on, as far as the jet scooter, and she comes up from behind and stabs him and takes control of it. My daughters saw that and were just amazed that a female superhero could be like that. This was before they knew of Wonder Woman or anything like
Mhm.
that. And there's such an influence there to them to this day. They were hooked ever since, and they got me hooked into the Marvel Cinematic Universe because of it. And you're right. I have been screaming for a Black Widow movie for years. I'm so happy that
And
it's finally going to happen. But I will say this, I think there was a hesitation in Hollywood because of the fact that I guess we this goes back to the earlier part of this century when Daredevil and Elektra came into the Marvel Cinematic universe of their own. And unfortunately, both of them were not great hits in and of themselves. And I think, especially in Elektra's case, that shied away Hollywood from a female led superhero movie. But it wasn't until Wonder Woman struck out and struck out big, and DC, you got to be complimentary on them on taking that bold step, but they should have gone ahead and done it Marvel anyways. Marvel had that chance and opportunity to go ahead and take that first step, but chose not to do so. And I think my only rationale in saying that is because of what happened with Elektra.
the thing that bothers me about that is the problem with Elektra is not because it was a female character. The problem with Elektra is that they decided to ignore the comics and they decided to ignore who's going to be coming to watch these movies. And they used her as an excuse, if anything. And it's a lot like, well, nobody goes to see these kinds of movies. Well, only because nobody's making them. It's the same thing that they've said about we can't choose the more diverse superheroes to have a movie on because nobody goes to see those movies. Really? Nobody saw Blade? That's why they made 3 Blade movies? No,
Exactly.
people love
Exactly.
those movies. And that's why Black Panther did so well, because people are waiting for this. They are tired of seeing the same superhero story. How many times do we need to see Batman's origin story? We get it. His parents are dead. How many times do we have to see Spider-Man's origin story with Peter Parker? I mean, I think we've all heard the buzz. We've all heard the noise that the best Spider-Man movie right now is Into the Spider-Verse, that everybody is loving that. And why? Because of Miles Morales. A good friend of mine, podcaster from Talk Nerdy to Me podcast, told me that he never truly understood representation until he saw Miles Morales, because he said that's what he needed when he was growing up. He needed to see a boy like him on the movie screens, and he is just so happy for all the young kids now who are able to see Miles Morales on the screen. So my argument to everybody that says, oh, well, Elektra didn't do too well is, well, Elektra was about as good for the comic book movies as Catwoman was. And we all know that DC said, yeah, that's not really Catwoman.
Well, I'll tell you what, it goes like this. If somebody were to ask me or ask many people out there what was the most successful Marvel movie before the Marvel Cinematic Universe started, and they couldn't take a Spider-Man movie or one of the
Yeah,
Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies from it, you'd have to say Blade. Blade is an
absolutely.
excellent movie, and you're right, it did spawn 3, and actually got people educated with what Ryan Reynolds did in number 3 as far as
Hmm.
his future with Deadpool and whatnot. But yes, Blade was there. The representation
Well,
is
and
just
Blade
that.
also made more comic book movies come out, because
Yes.
Blade came out in a time where comic book movies were not happening. This was a dry spell for comic book movies. And then Blade came out and other comic book movies came after that.
Well, I would, and a lot of other people have said, in fact, even on this show, that there's a hope that Blade will actually return as a character to the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Hmm.
I think if you're going to go ahead and try and force feed us Fantastic Four one more time,
One more
if you're going to
time.
go, if you're going to go ahead and force feed us the X-Men, hopefully with a better cohesive plot storyline overarching than what they've done in the past. If you're going to force feed us the X-Men one more time into the Marvel Cinematic Universe down the road, then go with a character that you were successful with and that you have a good history with. And Blade certainly fits the bill. And I think it would just be an awesome to see him part of that universe at some point down the line. But that's my thoughts, and I think that's what you're sharing too as
Yeah.
well. Representation from all aspects of the realm. If it's just good filmmaking, then people are going to go ahead and
Yeah.
watch it. Elektra failed because it just wasn't a good movie, not because of who was heading it. It
No.
was just a lousy movie. I mean, it's just that simple. People will go out of their way to go see a good movie, and
And the thing
hopefully,
is, like, it's not just about representation and diversity. It's why are you showing us the same stories over and over again? People get bored of that. You want something new, you want something different. There's a lot of people that well, not a lot. There are a few people that complain about the Ant-Man that we have on screen, that they wanted a different storyline, they wanted a different movie. But what made Ant-Man work so well is that he was nothing like anything else that we're seeing on screen. And that's another white guy story. But it was different enough. We don't need to see the same story of like the boring person who gets powers and then struggles with, I just want to be normal kind of a thing. And I want to get back to what you were talking about with finally getting a Black Widow movie. Why did it take so long? One of the coolest parts about Black Widow is she's a superhero that doesn't have powers.
I mean,
She's
in the movies, I think in Agent Ultron, it flashes back to where they tried the Russians tried to give
Yeah,
her the super sauce, the secret
yes.
super sauce, I should say. But and she is not at the level of Cap or any of the other major
No,
superheroes.
it's all training.
Exactly. She is ahead of Hawkeye, I guess, if you were going to
Yep.
go ahead and rank it. But she's not as strong as Captain America, or she's definitely not. Captain Marvel is actually, if you give my vote right now, as far as the overall strongest, I think the one that's been given the best and most powers is Captain Marvel at this point in time. So it's interesting to see how she'll be structured in it. And there is the worry that I think some people have, not because it's a female or even if it's a male coming into the aspect that how overpowered is she as
Mhm.
opposed to the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You don't want her coming in the first 20 minutes and saying, I'm going to kill Thanos. She kills Thanos. End of story. This is
Exactly.
going to be a 3-hour movie. I think the Russos are going to be able to find a creative way to keep her involved, set her up strong for the rest going forward, but still maintain a scenario where the original Avengers at the end are going to be able to save the day and be able to satisfy those individuals out there that have invested 10 years plus in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, I don't foresee a Deus Ex Machina. I don't foresee an easy button taking care of everything and throwing out everything that was built up. I really don't think that they spent this many years focused on, okay, how do we just do a simple fix to this cliffhanger thing. But I am very interested to see what they come up with, and I hope that they do it really well, and I hope that the next phase, it is more of, as I said, new characters, new stories. Give us something interesting and don't keep telling us the same story.
I'm so interested to see Shang-Chi. I'm going to be honest with you.
Oh
That
yeah.
that is something I'm really excited to see because Josh and I, my co-host, we have talked about the dearth of kung fu martial art films that have crossed over in recent years, and there's been a lack of them. And we'd love to see that martial arts movie become something of a spectacle movie once again in the American Western audience, like it was a little while ago in the 90s, 2000s,
Mhm.
early 2000s. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. There's a few others, but yes, I'd like to see that come back again, and maybe Shang-Chi will kickstart that. But yes, I'm excited for that and so many other films. The next Doctor Strange, the next Black Panther, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. There's so many others. But yes, Captain Marvel 2 and all that is going to be heading it up with hopefully a great kickoff point, but also a great closing for the previous 10 years of films and a great starting point for the next phase in Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
One last question I got to ask you, Nutty.
All
I tell
right.
you what, you've got some two great shows, not one, but two great shows out there. So I need to know more and let everybody out there know more about Nutty Bites and Beyond the Wall.
Okay, so Beyond the Wall, it's you can find it by going to specficmedia.com. And we are spoiler free, which means that we do not divulge anything from the books that hasn't already been seen on screen. And we are actually recording episode 0 tonight. The premiere airs tomorrow. I don't know when this is being released, but it'll probably have happened by then. And due to our release schedule is actually going to be a little different this year because one of our co-hosts is actually in Korea for part of this. So this is going to be a multi-country collaboration going on. But we're actually going to probably start putting out 2 episodes, a mini teaser episode where everybody's got their very quick initial reactions to kind of hold you over. And then later in the week, we're going to put out our full episode of what is to come. So if you really want to hear that very quick initial reaction from the hosts that you may have been listening to for the past, it's been more than 8 years. No, it's been 8 years, 2011. For the past 8 years, this is a great way to do that. But also you can listen to Nutty Bites by going to nimlas.org. That's NIMLAS.org. And basically we just talk about anything that is geeky. Right now I'm editing an episode where we talk about mediums that don't get the love that they deserve. Things like anime, cartoons, horror films, all of those things. So anything geeky, that's what we talk about. And you can find that at nimlas.org.
Well, that's awesome indeed. Once again, that's the Nutty Bites podcast and Beyond the Wall. I know there's a lot of anticipation to talk about because there's that little indie show coming up on HBO called Game of Thrones. I know there's a lot of excitement for that. Dragons be flying there. That's for sure.
And a nice dragon.
Yes, exactly. And the zombie dragon too, which is really cool. I love that aspect, just like nothing brightens up your day like a zombie dragon. So
it'll be really interesting to see where things go. I am of the mind that the HBO staff has taken everything George told them and threw it out the window, and that we're going to end completely separately than the books, which makes me really excited because with all the changes that they had to try to shoehorn and go back to where George originally wanted to go, I think would be difficult and not very good for storytelling. But that also means that when the final books are released by George, we'll have something new.
As my friend Josh says it, I think he would have to agree with you, and so would I, because George Martin just never gets anything done. He always tweets about it, but never actually gets the stories done.
So I don't know if I can swear on your podcast, but George R. R. Martin is not your witch with a capital B. Look up that song. It is fantastic. But yeah, he is writing at his own pace and no one else's. And I always say for every person that complains that the next book isn't out, George adds another 6 months.
Exactly. And he doesn't look like the healthiest individual in the world, so maybe you might want to speed that up.
But that's actually not true. He's actually like in some of the best health he's been in his life. Like if you read his Not a Blog, he has put some health updates. He's an older person, sure, but other than that, like his numbers are good, his health is fine. He's no more likely to keel over than say Stephen King. And actually, I think Stephen King might be more prone to, considering all of the accidents he's had. So I mean, it's very frustrating for me as a longtime fan, because I've been reading the book since like forever, to hear people say that, because it's like, yeah, he looks exactly the same as he did when he started writing the books in the 90s. So I think he's just going to be fine. He's not Robert Jordan. As much as people think he is, he's not Robert Jordan.
You got a good point there. He, as soon as you said that, I'm thinking like, he does look like he did.
Yeah. He has not aged. He's not changed in shape or size or anything. He sounds exactly the same. The only thing that has happened is he actually is a little more overwhelmed at cons and is doing less cons because he's a little too famous now. That's the only big difference.
I believe that's correct, yes. And there's a lot of speculation going on for him to finish the books, but even more speculation of what's going on with the Game of Thrones. And if they want updates on as far as opinions on what's going on with the final season for the Game of Thrones, there's no better place to go than Beyond the Wall, and also another great show, the Nutty Bites podcast as well.
Thanks so much.
Nutty, just great to have you on the show and part of the pop culture cosmos.